Hello, this is Mr. Kashmir, and this is the Innovative Literacy lecture video on making meaning. Reading's all about making meaning. And by that I mean that in order to read well, you need to make meaning as you read. In order to comprehend what you're reading, there needs to be an interaction happening between you and the text in which you derive meaning from what you read. If that's not happening, you're not reading. And if that's not happening, you're never going to love reading because you're not getting what you need to out of the text. It all comes down to making meaning. So let's just look at some studies here. Comprehension is defined as intentional thinking during which meaning is constructed through interactions between text and reader. In other words, in order to comprehend what it is that you're reading, you have to construct, that means make, meaning by interacting with the text. Thus, readers derive meaning from text when they engage in intentional, problem-solving thinking processes. So reading is active. Reading is intentional. Reading is something that you need to do with a purpose. If you're reading passively, you're not reading at all. The data suggests that text comprehension is enhanced when readers actively relate the ideas represented in print to their own knowledge and experiences and construct mental representations in memory. So not only are you looking to make meaning, but you're bringing in your background knowledge, you're bringing your whole self, your whole brain, everything it is that you know and everything it is that you've been through, you bring that with you to the text. And that is something that helps you to make meaning. So the purpose of this video, and indeed the entire purpose of Innovative Literacy, is to get you to be so great at reading and love reading so much, and there will be this cycle between loving it and becoming great at it. And part of what we need to do in order to make that happen is make sure that we're explicitly teaching some reading comprehension skills. This is why you're reading all the time, talking about reading all the time, writing about reading all the time, and answering questions about what you've read all the time. If you're interested in the rationale for why we teach reading skills, it's right here on this slide. This slide and the one before and after it all come from readingrockets.org. You're welcome to hit pause on the lecture and read this particular slide at your leisure, but essentially what it says is that when you teach reading comprehension, when you teach students cognitive strategies in order to be able to reason, and in order to be able to think through what they're reading, they get better at it. Okay? Again, if you'd like to read the rationale in more detail, go ahead and hit pause here. This next slide is what works. And again, I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but I just want you to see that the data have proven that if we explicitly teach and practice reading comprehension skills, you get better at it. You understand what it is that you're reading. And the more you understand it, the more you're going to love it. And the better you get, the more you're going to love it. And the more you love it, the better you're going to get. So things like monitoring comprehension are incredibly important. We've talked about this in class already. It's this idea that you're actually keeping track while you're reading. You're keeping track of whether it is that you are or are not understanding what it is that you're reading. And if you're not understanding it, having the self-discipline to monitor yourself, go back and get that meaning out. Cooperative learning is obviously something that we'll be doing in Innovative Lit, learning these strategies together. Graphic and semantic organizers, we won't use too much, but sometimes perhaps. Answering questions, we're doing it all the time. Question generation, that'll come further down the line. Story structure is actually something we're learning in theater arts class right now, and we'll talk about it in Innovative Lit at some point as well, I'm sure. And summarization is going to be our next big topic after annotation. These are the things, ladies and gentlemen, these are the things that work. These are the things that have been shown to work in reading classes all across the country. And I firmly believe that if we simply focus on reading level and reading love by doing things like this, that you're going to become absolutely phenomenal readers. So here I have two pictures, as you can see. One is a picture of a person, and the other is a picture of a book. And what I want you to see here is that reading is not a direct act. It is not this person reads this text. All the words in the text go through their head and then they stop, and that's what reading is. No. It's actually not reading at all. Okay? Reading is an interaction. Reading is an interaction between the text and the reader, in which the reader takes in the words in the text, and the text makes the reader think of certain things, and together, between the reader and the text, the reader works to make meaning from the text. The reader works to make meaning from the text. So if you want a really simple definition of reading, it is the interaction between the reader and the text. Again, it is the interaction between the reader and the text that culminates in the creation of meaning. Reading is the interaction between the reader and the text, during which the reader makes new meaning from the text. That is what reading is. Reading is nothing else but that. It is you and the words and your thought process, your active thought process of making meaning from those words as you read. That is what reading is. If you aren't doing that, you aren't reading. So making meaning is something that you can do on your own, just you and a book. But you have to make the mental effort to actively, as you're reading, monitor your understanding and take time out to stop and pause and think and have other ideas come up that may be related, or it may remind you of something, or you may have a question and you'll stop and you'll look back in the text, or you'll reread, or you'll see a word and you don't know it and you look it up. That is what reading is. It is actively making meaning of a text as you read. It is that interaction that you have with the text. That is what reading is. And you may make meaning with others, as we will be doing a lot of in this class. When you stop and pause and discuss and go back and cite examples and debate and argue and have really great conversations about that text. Also, annotation is a big part of making meaning. So you may add a pen or a pencil to your reading habitually, not just for this class, but for all classes, and that's automatically going to make you a better reader. It's absolutely guaranteed. Getting great at annotating is a fantastic way to actively make meaning as you read. So what I have here is an article from Time Magazine. A few weeks ago, Time Magazine did an entire issue on cell phones called the wireless issue, and it's full of articles about the way that cell phones are impacting the world around us. And this is just one article from that Time Magazine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through it. It's pretty short, and as I read through it, I'm going to be actively making meaning and talking you through the way in which I am making meaning. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, the article is called "Gadgets Go to Class," and the subtitle is, "Instead of banning kids' phones, some schools are starting to embrace them," and the author is John Cloud. Now, I'm not going to go on right away. First, I'm going to pause, and this is what I actually do when I'm actually reading. This is what you should be doing too. I'm going to pause and make sure I got it and think through it in my own words. So, gadgets go to class. Okay, so gadgets obviously is referring to like mechanical things like cell phones going to class. So they're talking about actually the idea of taking a cell phone with you to class. Instead of banning kids' phones, some schools are starting to embrace them. So I guess what the article is going to be about is it's going to be about the ways in which cell phones are now being used in schools. I see over on the right-hand side a picture of a cell phone with a DNA double helix, and it's inlaid over a picture of a book. And if you look at the book, there's pictures of DNA double helixes also. So I would imagine, I don't know yet, I haven't read the article, but I would imagine, just looking at all of this, that the reason the picture's there is that it's there to illustrate that in addition to textbooks with their traditional words and pictures, there are cell phones and cell phone apps that can be used to help students learn. Right? Now, I'm not actually going to sit here when I'm actually reading an article and draw all of those things and mark up all of those things. The reason I'm marking them up is to help guide you through what it is that you're seeing. But I am actually, as I read, going to take the time to think through that thought process that I just shared with you. And it'll be a little bit quicker, but what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I get it before I go on. I'm thinking through in my own words what it is that I've just read. So what I've just read is this article is going to be about cell phones being used in school, and based on the picture, I think it's going to show ways in which cell phones are helping kids learn in addition to textbooks. I've gotten all of that from about 12 words in a picture. So here's the article. Even though the vast majority of students own cell phones, something like 80% by 8th grade, more than half of schools prohibit the use of any mobile device. Okay, so let's see here. What do I need? I think this is going to be important. More than half of schools prohibit the use of any mobile device, and the majority of students own cell phones. The vast majority. I don't really care that it's 80%. But if I need to go back and find the number, it'll be easy to find because it's not a word, so it'll be easy anyway. Even though the vast majority of students own cell phones, something like 80% by 8th grade, more than half of schools prohibit the use of any mobile device. I've just read that sentence twice. You should be rereading pretty regularly. The idea of rereading a sentence or a paragraph should become a part of your habits as you're learning to make meaning while reading. And yet a few pioneering administrators are considering a new approach called BYOT, Bring Your Own Technology. Okay, so there's a definition. BYOT means bring your own technology. Okay. BYOT offers an elegant solution to an old problem. Instead of outlawing kids' devices, BYOT policies allow kids to take their phones or tablets to class and use them not just to Instagram stupid photos from Friday night, but also to engage with one another in classroom lessons. Okay, so the stupid photos from Friday night is just a little joke to entertain us, but what's important here is that the policies allow kids to take their phones or tablets to class and use them to engage with one another in classroom lessons. Cool, so what have I learned? I've learned that a lot of schools don't let kids use their cell phones, but some are starting to use them in lessons. To many parents who use a cell phone to juggle the obligations of work and family and words with friends, school bans on phones can seem ridiculous. Even a first-generation iPhone is more powerful than some computer labs' ancient desktops. Putting a new laptop at every desk can cost hundreds of dollars per student, so tapping into the tech that kids already have seems like a no-brainer. Why can't schools turn those devices into learning tools? Cool. So this makes a lot of sense to me. The idea is technology costs money, but a lot of kids have technology already, so why not use it, right? This idea is logical, and what I'm doing is I'm stopping, as you notice, and after every single paragraph, sometimes every single sentence, and I'm thinking about, well, what do I think about this? I think that's logical. Well, what are they saying? Well, they're saying this particular thing, and I'm making meaning constantly as I read. Okay. A small but growing number of schools are giving it a try. Some districts, such as those in Meriden, Connecticut, Allen, Texas, and Hanover, Pennsylvania, have developed BYOT policies that allow kids not only to take their mobile devices to school, but also to access school networks. The districts, all in relatively wealthy enclaves where a new iPad causes no stir, enforce strict rules. Kids can use devices only with the teacher's permission. Activating a screen during tests can be grounds for expulsion. Okay. So if you're going to use the technology, you need the rules. Great. Now, here's what I'm never going to do. I'm never going to read through the next paragraph or the next two paragraphs or the next three paragraphs and not think about what I've read. It doesn't mean that every paragraph needs to take 2 or 3 minutes, but it does mean that I am actively thinking. The things that I'm saying out loud right now, if I were reading, it would be happening faster, but they would be happening in my head. Because reading is not just the words on the page going through your mind, it's the interaction between you and the words on the page. Reading is about the thought process you're having as you read and the meaning that you're making from what you read. With that in mind, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you the rest of this article. On this page, and the next page, and the last page, I'm going to give you the opportunity, and it's your choice, to pause each slide Read through, make meaning of what you've read. Do not read straight through without thinking. Read and think. Stop and think and make meaning. Take some self-discipline and some getting used to. It'll start seeming slow, but you'll get used to it. And you're really going to love it if you have the self-discipline to give it a try. So, if you're interested, you should hit pause now, finish the page, then hit play, and I'll take you to the next one. Here's the next page. Again, feel free to hit pause. You'll notice on the right-hand side here there is a sidebar, which is a mini article inside the article. And here's the final page. Again, if you're taking the time to read the article and make meaning as you read, you want to hit pause now. So here we are on our final slide, and this is just a recap. Remember, reading is not about going through the words on the page from start to finish and moving on. Reading is about actively thinking through the text. It is about the interaction between you and the words on the page, and it is about your active effort to use that interaction to make new meaning. It's not about what's on the page, it's actually about what's happening in your head as you go. And that is what is going to take you to great heights in your reading ability.